Hello and welcome back to Serpent Sunday. As always, I am your host, Morgan. This week we're going to be talking about a recently discovered species of viper and also going on a bit of a tangent about some of the controversy or lack thereof regarding its name. This new species of viper has been found by a team of scientists in India and given the common name Salazar's pit viper, after the character in J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter world, Salazar Slytherin. This pit viper can be characterized by its bright green coloration and two very thin orange stripes on either side of the body from the eye to the tail. In the males of the species, these stripes are more pronounced, and in the females, they tend to have a more yellowish or muted coloration. But that's about what is known about this animal at the moment, other than the genetic analysis that went into determining it is in fact its own distinct species. The Salazar's pit viper comes from the genus Timorhesirus, which includes a bunch of pit vipers from Southeastern Asia. In general, this genus is not super heavily studied, and most of the species are considered an understudied species. Right now, there are at least 48 species in this genus. However, because of their cryptic colorations and nature, it is very hard to study them. What this means is they are very good at hiding and blending into their environment. These pit vipers all have a fairly hemotoxic venom from what is known, and most of the research done on them is specifically the medical applications of their venom. It's thought that most of the species likely give birth to live young. However, it is noted that a lot of the species have not been studied for their reproductive habits. So, little asterisk there. But what's a little more interesting about this story specifically is in the reporting of the news about finding this snake. Now, if you look at media that's more common in the general public, like CNN, the article will have a little section about there's been a new snake found, here's its name, here's where it's from. And then the remainder of the article is just about the character from Harry Potter. Whereas if you go look at like scinews.com, which does report on more scientific findings, they note the Harry Potter thing tangentially and move into actually where the snake is from, how it was determined its own species. But that's really not what I'm going to focus on. What I'm going to focus on is when I was looking through Twitter, specifically in the comments on the CNN article, there were some comments just in disbelief that this is a new species. And there was some, like the one I'm showing here, calling scientists immature because they dared to name a new discovery after something in pop culture. Now, as someone who does study science, it hurts me a little bit in the feels being called immature because it's fairly clever to name new discoveries after pop culture. Now, I'm taking some of my argument from a Smithsonian Mag article because it does talk about the benefits of naming new things after characters in pop culture. This article will be linked down below. This snake is not the first creature in modern science to be named after a pop culture figure. There have been plenty of fairly recent discoveries, even in the last 10 years, named after not just Harry Potter characters, since the Salazar's pit viper is not the only new species that has been named after a Harry Potter character. But you also see creatures named after Star Wars, Lady Gaga, Big Bang Theory references, and Lovecraft. So why is it immature exactly to call this snake the Salazar's pit viper? Well, I would argue that it's not. As the Smithsonian article points out, a lot of times in the general populace, scientists are thought of to be kind of stuffy and boring without any real interest other than what they're studying. But I can at least tell you from my personal experience talking to the scientists that I interact with on a near daily basis is that scientists are nothing but a bunch of goofy nerds, and they are no different from anyone else. They enjoy things like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Star Trek, what have you, and they are more than just a lab coat. But beyond that, when you're naming a new species, it needs to be unique, and after a while, that hits kinda tough. So one of the logical things to do is to turn to pop culture. And I would argue that it's no more immature to name a snake after a character in a book than it is to name it after yourself if you're the one to discover it. And I fail to see how it's immature to pull names from pop culture, especially since the general population is more likely to read an article about a new species that's named after something they can recognize. Because if I were to discover a new creature and name it after myself, who's going to read an article about Morgan's pit viper or what have you? They're much more likely to read an article that is also referencing something they know and love. And no matter how far back you go, you see things being named after what would have been the pop culture of the time. However, as you get into more modern times, that's not necessarily recognized, but it's just a little silly to me that it seems some people are so outraged by it still happening. After all, the planets named after gods would have been considered the pop culture of that time. Sure, these names are forever, and eventually a pop culture name will fade and not be as exciting, but we do live in a world where science is not as funded as it should be, so is there really any harm in a scientist naming a creature after something that's going to get recognition and possibly lead to more funding for their lab and for future looks into whatever they're studying? No, I fail to see the problem with that. It doesn't make scientists immature. It just is more of a nod to something that is fairly prevalent in the pop culture, in the general populace, that is going to get people's attention. And personally, I believe that anything that gets someone at least a little more interested in science is a good thing. But I might be alone in that. So this is kind of the end of my little rant here. I do think it's exciting that we are still finding new species. And to kind of respond to the other comment I mentioned where some people are in disbelief that we're still finding new species, we know more about the surface of our moon than we do about the bottom of our ocean. Also, there are still plenty of very remote locations on the land that are hard to study, so is it really that hard to believe that we're finding new species? As well as evolution hasn't stopped. It's still an ongoing process and will perpetually be one until our planet dies, if that's what happens. So it is completely reasonable that new species are currently popping up, some of which that may pop up and never be discovered. But this is where I'm going to leave you. I have linked everything that I possibly could about our new little friend, the Salazar's pit viper, as well as the original article published about it that announced this new discovery. That article is very technical and very long, so I do suggest reading probably the Science Mag article about it instead of the very number and method heavy research article. But that's all I have for you. I do hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and this video is going out on Mother's Day, so any of the mothers watching, happy Mother's Day. And I will see you guys all next time. Thank you again for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell if you would like to see more. And if you'd like to follow me on any of my other social medias, the links are down in the description below. Don't forget to check out thereptilegoth.com for all of my articles and blog posts. If you found any value in this video and you would like to help support the channel, please check out my Patreon page. That link is also in the description down below. And a special thanks goes out to my Diamond Dragon patron, Diane V. What you're doing is really helping me fund a dream here. I will see you guys all in the next one.